Praveen Adupa. I'm a middleware solutions architect at Red Hat. JON, which is JBoss Operations Network, the management solution for the JBoss middleware product. And also just follow up with a demo of all the functionality that JON um, provides, right? So that said, let's get started with the overview. So first of all, obviously the management is a big piece with from a middleware standpoint. So for the JBoss middleware, the management product is basically JBoss Operations Network. It provides a full-fledged deployment management and monitoring capabilities integrated into one single console, and also it can manage pretty much the complete set of middleware products, which are like whether it's a JBoss application server or enterprise application platform, or JBoss web server, or BPM, or even integration products. But it can manage and monitor, and also you can do provisioning. We'll certainly go more detailed. But the whole idea of it is just to make those activities easier and simpler with one single management tool. So that's kind of very high level. So what really what are the real features and functionalities part of JBoss Operations Network, right? So one of the things that JBoss Operations Network can do, which I'll refer to as a JON from now on. But JON can do is, first thing, it can do inventory, which means the automatic resource discovery. So basically, once you have the JON system or installation up and running, it has its agents running, across the nodes where you are going to be monitoring, and it can, automatically discover the resources. For example, they could be your Apache web server, or even the platform itself, the Linux platform or Windows platform, as well as the middleware products, right? So it can do the complete resource discovery and then provide that in a single dashboard for you to kind of take a look and see which of those inventory that you're interested at or to manage and monitor, right? So that's the first step. So once you have that inventory collected and imported, and then the next things come into picture, such as monitoring, right? So monitoring, obviously, it varies from product, what product that you're actually monitoring, whether you're smart planning to monitor just the OS level metrics, or if you're running JBoss application server, if it is that JBoss metrics, it just varies. It has quite a few metrics that it can gather and provide a historical graphs over a period of time, right? So you can take a look at go back in time and see what happened in a particular day associated with your load, or things like that. But it does that, and obviously the other thing is, once you have these metrics, you want to be able to get alerted, and you want to be notified when things are not good. If the server goes down or your heap memory goes up, then the limits that you would like to be, then you can actually configure the email alerts, text messages, SNMP traps, things, all those things like that, right? So that's the monitoring aspect of JON. And then the other aspect is command line interface. Of course, I mean, from a management standpoint, it's great that there's an awesome UI that you can just go into that web-based UI and then do a lot of management right from there. But when it comes to automation and scripting those operational tasks on a day-to-day, or for your either continuous integration or deployment pipelines, right? So you need those command line scripts to be available. So JON certainly has a CLI interface, You can plug, you can script those operations, whether they be deployment or whether they be configuration changes, things like that, right? So you can pretty much integrate all those with your existing pipelines. Um, so that's the command line point of view. And then, obviously, the scheduler, right? So you can actually, do, whether operations, for example, right? So if you want to, if there are multiple EAP servers, you want to, start them or stop them, or or recycle them when, they need to be, for example, if the heap memory goes up and if the server is not responding, you want to, schedule a, restart or things like that, right? So you can do, pretty much all of that, pretty much all of those operational tasks, right inside the JON environment. And then the deployment, so certainly, when you have all these resources, you can deploy your artifacts, whether they be war files, year files, even the configuration changes. Actually, for that matter, you can even, pretty much provision the whole, application server itself, or whether, JBoss application server or your Tomcat. You can provision a complete environment onto your JON resources, right? So that deployment aspect is built in, and there's several ways to do it, and then we'll go through it. And then the next aspect of it is the control. So obviously, I think we kind of talked about it. I mean, from an operational tasks, whether not only do you just, manage and monitor at a certain, at a certain point, or even in future, you want to, select, set a schedule, or you want to do it synchronously at this point. So you can do all those, operations, right from the JON environment. For example, you want to test a data source connection pool, things like that, or, obviously start and stop, or, some of those. And then the next thing is the configuration changes. So the configuration changes, or also, you can actually use JBoss Operations Network to push your configuration, onto your multiple, resources, whether, again, JBoss, mm, for example, the EJB connection, EJB pool settings, right? So you want those configuration changes to be done on the multiple servers. You can do that straight from the JON interface or even CLI, right? And that's that aspect. So the other thing is the software updates. Uh, so again, you can certainly do, patching the EAP, using, JBoss Operations Network. So you can download, and also it has, a built-in interface, integrated interface into the customer support portal, as well as the feeds, the patch feeds, that JBoss provides, or the Red Hat provides. Um, so, you can take those and then store them into a local repository and then update those, patches, as per your schedule, via the JON environment. So that's really, very high level, what JON is and what JON can do. And so with that said, obviously I don't think we have, obviously there are, issues from a, middleware management standpoint. There are, I mean, every operations person knows this stuff. We don't really have to, go, too much detail here, but, you're dealing with, several different things, whether it's configuration or heterogeneous deployment environments, or, the speed of, operations, or, maintaining your service levels, right? So there's several challenges that, JON actually tries to address and make the operations, operations life simple, right? So again, there's just a little bit more, deeper into each of those areas, that we just talked about. For example, provisioning and deployment. Um, just from a, you could be managing a, heterogeneous deployment environments, right? So you could have multiple, Windows servers, or, Linux servers, or, so, or, different middleware products itself, right? So it could be just the EAP, or it could be a JBoss BPM suite. So, obviously you just need to manage all that, from, from it. If you have to do it manually, that's a challenge, right? So certainly JON can help. You can actually establish a much more consistent deployment and provisioning process using JON. And there is obviously a lot of accountability that you can track, who's doing what, things like that. So again, I think we talked about the patches and all that. So you can certainly do all that stuff. So that's a bit more on the deployment. Configuration management, again, I think you can certainly make changes. And then John has a neat feature called the drift management. It can actually monitor any changes on your configuration file. So you can, I think we'll talk about more, and then I'll show you in the demo. But what the drift management functionality is basically, you can take specific files, right? For example, in an EAP environment, you either want to monitor a standalone or domain .xmls, and you don't want them to be changed without being notified or without being a proper process in place. So you could put those files, for example, under the control of the John's drift management capability. So that once you have that drift configured, John can actually track all the changes that happens to those files, and actually maintains the history of those changes and shows you the differences. And you can always roll back to a particular version of that change, or to your, if you're defining some golden templates, certainly you can just roll it back to that particular templates. And also, obviously, you can get alerted when those changes happen, so that you're aware, that there's something going on in the environment that you would be interested in. So that's from a configuration management standpoint. Again, performance availability. So certainly this is where the whole monitoring aspect comes into picture. Just keeping an eye on how your applications are performing, whether it's a JVM point of view, or whether your application request response times point of view. John is going to track all that, and then provide you the metrics. And those metrics actually vary, based on whether you're actually monitoring an active MQ environment, or if you're monitoring a Tomcat, right? So, but again, it's a similar concept. So I just wanted to touch base on quickly on how the JBoss Operations Network architecture, right? So it's actually kind of a hub and spoke type of environment, right? So there's a server, management server, and there are the agents that are actually running on the actual managed hosts, which are basically your physical or virtual servers that are running middleware products. So on each of these managed hosts, so you're actually deploying a JBoss Operations Network agent. So it's running as a process on these hosts, and then basically in that particular process is monitoring the resources that are running on that host, and then providing the information collected back to the management server. And so the way this happens is there's a bit of a customized custom plugin architecture. So there are several plugins that can be used to monitor each of those middleware products. So for example, for EAP, there's a separate plugin, and similarly for Fuse or Postgres or BPM Suite. So these plugins are actually specific to a product, and then they get deployed on the management server, and the agents get the updates automatically. So you don't have to go and install these plugins on individual agents. You just install them on the server. Agents are configured to download any latest updates in the plugins on the server, and then just reconfigure themselves, right? So that way, your environment is up and running all the time. That's the architecture wise, and obviously I think some of the stuff that we talked about And then the management server is backed by a relational database. Currently, we support Oracle as well as um, Postgres server, right? So I think Postgres 8.4 and Postgres 9.x, I believe, or 9.1. But so those two database servers are supported, and again, you can actually configure role-based access control, and just plug in your existing LDAP, LDAP server into JON, so that way you can use pretty much those roles that you already defined with JBoss operations network. So that's kind of the just a high level of JON as well as how it functions, all that. And then we'll actually go into the demo right now. Work in a Docker environment, so actually Dockerized JBoss JON server, as well as the I'm also running two EAP servers. So those two are Dockerized as well. So I'm just going to start my JON environment here. So this is my JON server that I'm just going to start, and then I also have the EAP Docker containers. So these are two EAP Docker containers that one is called managed EAP 1 and then managed EAP 2. So it's going to start this too. So once we have this up and running, obviously you can go to the JBoss Operation Network console. And let me bring it here. Host on 80. It's just going to take a little while to start up. So I'll just give a break here, and we'll come back once it starts. Guys, so we're back here now that the server is started. It just took a minute to actually get started. So I'm just going to log in here into the JON server console. So as soon as you log in here, so this is really the central dashboard that you're looking at. So what we're going to do, what we're going to look at is, let's go back to the inventory or automatic resource discovery that I was talking about, right? So let me just click on this inventory tab here, and you actually see a discovery queue right here. So the discovery queue is where pretty much all your discovered resources, or the discovered resources that are reported by the agents that you have up and running. Those are the ones that get listed here. And then actually I did already import my EAP servers on this demo, so you're not seeing them here. But for example, just select them and then pretty much just go ahead and import, right? So that's once you have that imported, then basically just come back to your dashboard. You'll have these servers or platforms. So let's start here at the platform in total. So when we're looking at the platform, these are actually your either here I'm using Docker containers, but they pretty much very well be either your physical boxes or your virtual machines running your any operating system, Windows or RHEL, or anything like that, right? So all those platforms are going to be listed. They'll get discovered, and then there we have it right there. So the next level that you can look at it is there are a couple of different ways to look at servers. Again, these are, when you look at here, what you're looking at is actual EAP server or the JBoss application server running inside that. Inside this is the root server, right? So when we looked at platforms, so you have managed EAP and managed EAP 1 and 2. So when you go to servers, so you have an EAP running in managed EAP1, and you have another EAP running on managed EAP2. So, and similarly, there are agents running on these two servers, and there's also something called a storage node. I think we'll talk more later, but that's basically for storing metrics on the JON server in a in-memory fashion. So so those are just high level. So obviously you can go drill down a little bit more. It also shows you the JVMs running here, and if you go more, you actually have services level, right? So it's much more deeper. You have pretty much across the board all the services. There are like maybe thousands of services that we're looking at here, right? So uh, obviously you can do some searching here, maybe data source. If you want to do data sources across all this, so there you go. I got two data sources that are actually deployed in my two of EAP instances. So it's kind of easy to actually search all your resources and just get to the ones that you want to look at. And obviously we can drill down into each of these, right? So for example, you click on that, you just go to the data sources tab straight, and then you have, we'll come back to all this, but you have pretty much detailed information as well as management right there. Again, there are a couple of other things. Ignored resources. So if, for example, if you don't want to monitor specific resources that got discovered, certainly you can ignore them, and also unavailable resource servers. And if any of your servers are down, that's certainly going to show up here. So that's just kind of gives a good view of how your environment is operating, right? So, and from a management as well as on a high level picture standpoint. So that's the inventory portion. So let's just go back to dashboard. I just want to touch on a couple of things here. So certainly I think the dashboard is actually very much configurable. So you can configure any which way you want. So you go to your edit mode, you can select in different portlets, and you can actually create different dashboards, a new dashboard as well. And so that's certainly configurable. But if you just quickly look at it here, you're certainly looking at recent alerts. So that's something that you might certainly be interested at, right? So you want to see what has been alerted. No, I mean, not only those are going to emails, certainly they're showing up here. So as soon as you log in here, you see them. And also similarly, there are alerted unavailable resources. So if there are servers down, you can do that. You can see that right here. And then the recent operations. So this is also another good source of information that you can put it to see what has been done recently on your environment. So you can see which servers got started or which servers got shut down. Pretty much all that audit tracking information is available. So again, it doesn't matter whether you're using CLI or management console. They're just pretty much all in sync, right? So again, so just a couple of things to look at. It's obviously you have all these metrics, all these numbers on your resources. We'll talk about the groups. There are different type of groups, compatible, mixed, and different groups, and then also average metrics per minute. So just want to mention that obviously there are several metrics that there's quite a few metrics that you can configure, but one thing to note is that certainly you don't want to bog down your environment just configuring thousands of metrics. Obviously it's going to take some resources, right? So you might want to see which are most important, or at least not just have some metrics that you're not going to care take the resources on your server. So it's not a big impact, but certainly a good idea as a best practice to just make sure that you know what you're actually collecting from a metric standpoint. But that's the number that's providing there. And okay, so let's talk about groups quickly. So the groups is one way. It's a great way to actually to manage multiple resources, right? So you're going to create, and I mean, if you have 100 EAP servers, certainly you don't want to do it an individual basis. So that's really the aspect of groups. So you're going to create a group of EAP servers, and then you're performing all your operations or configuration management, pretty much everything from a group standpoint. So and even you can create alerts on the group at the group level, so it kind of becomes easy to do that, right? So even within the groups, there are multiple, there are actually two types of groups here. So one is a dynamic group, dynamic groups, and there are other is a static groups, right? So static groups are basically the groups that you can actually you're creating, and you're manually assigning the resources that you want into those particular groups. And the dynamic, for example, let's take a look at one of the static group here, right? So if you look at this, or maybe I'll just quickly let's go back here, and let me just delete this group here, and then I'll just recreate it, right? Yes, and then I just want to create a new group, and I'm just going to call my, again, the same thing, test. Just want to make it recursive, which basically takes pretty much all the things. So here you're actually selecting the type of resources you want. So now this is more like a filter. So as soon as you have select server, all the server type of resources show up, and then you can actually say I only want to look at JBoss AS7. Oops. So got the wrong one here. Okay, there you go. I don't know what's wrong with my UI here, but yes. So once you have the AS7 selected, you have with that plugin, these are the two resources that so basically right now I'm just selecting these manually and then just making them as part of this particular group. So once I have that, so I have this group created, and I have two EAP servers running under that group, and then you have pretty much so. Obviously, so once the group is created, you just go onto the group, and then now you see, this is actually, I mean, right now we don't have much metrics, but so you're going to have these are all the group level metrics that are going to show up, and you go to inventory, and these are your child resources that we just selected. And pretty much same thing. We'll come back to all this alerts, monitoring, all that. But now we're talking at the group level, and this is a static group that we talked about, right? So the next thing is the dynamic group definition. So obviously, if you have 100 servers, you don't want to do this like keep on selecting multiple servers, and also your number of servers could be changing, right? So you might just take down 10 servers, and you don't want them to be you don't want to have your group membership to be changed or things like that. So what you can do is actually you can create a dynamic group definition. This is more like a query. So you're just basically defining a query, a group based on a query, right? So that particular query, you're just giving a definition on that query. Is that these are the type of resources. For example, AS7 plugin, and then maybe you can drill down if you need to. But let's take a look at one of them here. So now, for example, I created a dynamic group server here. So the query that I just provided is pretty straightforward, just like we did for the static group, but this is just based on the AS7, right? But what happens in this case is that so you have this dynamic group servers. At this point, we only have two servers. Even in your dynamic group. So let me just go back here. Oops, sorry. So let's go back here. So now we're looking at the dynamic group, right? So we're looking at the members. So since I selected, this is basically based on the recursive nature. So basically, it's just showing all the resources under that, under those particular EAP nodes. So that's why you see the whole big list, right? But if you, for example, if you add another server, another EAP node comes up online on one of your VMs or physical boxes, and that's going to join this group. and all the metrics are going to start getting collected, and then all the alerts and events are going to be fired as well. So that's the benefit of dynamic groups, is that you don't have to go change your membership manually. It's just it just automatically does it on the fly. So that's the dynamic groups, and they're like they're compatible and mixed groups. These are basically mixed compatible groups, are like similar type of resources. Like you can just say hey, just group my EAP servers, and then mixed groups are could be you could be grouping the different type of resources. They may not be just the same type of plugin. Obviously, things are going to be not all the functionality and features are going to be available on the mixed groups, because you can do some operations on some resources and some on the others, right? So compatible groups are basic, kind of gives a better management capabilities. So that's the group's point of view, right? So obviously there are other ways to look at problem groups and all that. So that's that. And then the reports. There are some out-of-the-box reports that are available as part of the JON environment. So you can certainly. The one thing to note that the JBoss operation network is that it's very it's very much customizable. So if you and then kind of it's based on a plugin architecture, right? So you can have your own plugins, or you can. I mean, everything that we were talking about is just a plugin that if you're that can be incorporated into the JON environment. So if you have to extend the JON functionality, you certainly can do it. And pretty much this is all. Also, you can see the source code in the. It's actually, the project is called RHQ in the community. So if you're aware, how the JBoss operating model is, we have open source projects pretty much for all of our enterprise versions. So just getting back here, but certainly you can just make quite a few changes. So just looking at the reports, there are alert definitions, recent alerts, and quite a few. And the drift compliance. I think we talked about drift a little bit, but we'll come back again. So that's that. Okay, let's go to bundles. So the bundles are one way to actually deploy your or provision your resources, or provision your applications, or even the application server itself, right? So the concept of bundle is more like a package of your application associated with an ant recipe file that is actually kind of a JON specific ant recipe file. Just provides information about how the application needs to be deployed, and where it needs to be copied, and what environment variables need to be set, and all that. So you can create your bundles based on your vars. So I do have a sample application here, which is called guess application. So basically the way you create these is you're just going to create a you go to versions. Actually, give me a second here. Okay, you're going to upload these bundles. I'm just looking for the place where you create a new bundle, right? Okay, there you go. Sorry about that, but so for example, if you have to create a new bundle, you're basically just going to package up your war file with a simple and recipe file, and then you can actually do version. I mean, it's also going to do version management by itself within JON as well. So if you have to revert to a specific version, you can do that. But basically, just click on a new button here to create a new bundle, and then you can actually select your bundle zip file, right? So since I will already have it here, I'm not going to go in there, but you can actually provide a file server for your bundle bundle installation. So you can be hosting your bundles on a file server, and then just provide that URL here. But bundles are just one way to deploy. So basically, in the process, you're going to select which group of servers you're going to deploy, and what are the environment variables based on the and script that you actually associated in the bundle itself, right? So that's the way you create bundles. So once you have this bundle created, obviously going to show up, and then the bundle groups, or basically where you're actually deploying this particular bundle into a group of servers, or into a particular group, right? So that's really the bundle groups there. So once you have that up and running, so you go in here. So these are the versions that you're looking at here. So you go into destinations, and then you just say deploy, and then here you can create pretty much a destination name. Here, for example, I use dev server, and then the deployment directory. You don't have to give one. By default, it takes the deployments folder. But if you have if you're storing your if you're storing your if your configuration is of EAP is that it's checking out a different deployment directory, you can certainly provide that, right? So that's that there. So here you're selecting group of servers, right? So dev servers or test servers, or whichever you want to deploy. So that's the deployment aspect. So there's actually another way to deploy. If you want to deploy it to individual servers, you can certainly go to that particular server, and then there are options provided to deploy. But this is the bundles are a great option to actually deploy to group of servers, and it can again it can integrate with your CI/CD pipeline as well. So that's the bundles here, and then administration. So let's just quickly take a look, what functionality that you have, from an administration standpoint. So you can certainly do a lot of configuration from your administration point of view. So there, as I said, like there are different plugins that are associated with JON, right? There's like agent plugins, which are basically the core part of the plugins, right? So these agent plugins are actually the ones that are monitoring resources on the nodes. So if you look at for example, ActiveMQ, or Apache HTTP server, or even Tomcat. So there's a Tomcat server here, and then pretty much all the middleware products. And then you can actually have your own custom plugins deployed into the JON environment. And there's some blogs out there that you can create those. So that's the agent-based plugins. And there's also server-level plugins. These are more like a server environment. I don't think not many people have to do much here, but again, I think we were talking about changing the server environment. If you have some requirements, certainly it's very much pluggable there. So that's that. Again, so there's another thing called the templates. So there are various templates, alert definition templates. So there are templates out of the box for various alerts. So for example, let's go to. I think you can actually create templates here, I guess. So for example, for AS7. So you can create a new alert definition template, and then that basically gets associated globally, right? So or you can actually assign this template to a particular group of servers. So again, there are also drift definition templates. So in terms of the configuration changes that you want to track, so you can define your drift on your environment. So for example, let's take a look one of them here. So the year, and what do we have here? So template files. So what are the template files in the drift here? Um, there you go. So let's take a look what you have here. Probably not, but you should be able to um, add few files. Basically you can define what includes and what excludes the server standpoint. So again, that's the drift definition templates, and then the metrics. Again, so the metrics are various levels of metrics. So if you go to AS7 and then you go to EJB3 jar, for example, and you have these metrics that are being collected as part of that template. So so there are threads and other stuff. So that again, just going back to, there are quite a few metrics that you can. So there are obviously, you see that enable templates and disable templates. So you might be able to disable if you don't want certain templates to be applied on a particular server. So basically you're doing everything at a global level when you're changing the templates itself. So wherever that template gets applied, it's going to change. So that's that. That's the templates point of view. There are various system settings that you can change, and there's like LDAP configuration properties, drift management settings. This is quite a few settings that you to go through. So certainly I think this documentation on all of this, how to configure and how to manage and on that. So I think we talked about how the JON agents are basically the once the JON agent registers with the server, it's going to show up here. So there obviously there's a local agent for the JON server itself, as well as there's a couple of other agents on two different other nodes. So there's one JON server, obviously three different agents here. Affinity groups. So this is basically when you're actually running in a HA environment. So if you want to have multiple JON servers running and monitoring across your data centers, for example, right? So you don't want your nodes that are actually reporting from one data center to a JON server in a different data center. So now you can actually create affinity groups and then associate your JON agents with those groups. So that way they're just basically going to a local JON server, and then that can still go to its own centralized database server, but you're just reaching out to your local JON server instead of just going and taking these metrics over the network. So that's that. Users and roles, again, you can create there's some roles out of the box that once you have your LDAP plugged in, now you can use all those roles within the JON environment. So the content sources and repositories. So the content sources, again, you can create different content sources. Though by default, there's a patch feed that goes to the JON that goes to the JBoss. JBoss, I guess, the patch portal or the patch feed, and then just takes those patches. So that way, you can download them right inside the JON, and then just store it inside the JON environment itself. And then when you actually store, that's when it basically gets stored into the database that's backing the JON server. So and for example, um, your feeds could be, or your repository could be, um, your own applications, right? So, for example, if you have your own application, you want to store those the versions that when we created the bundles, things like that. So you can take those feeds and then store them into the repositories. So usually the each of those repositories associated with a content feed here. So I think you can associate the content sources, right? So the content sources associated with this repository. So that's how you can pull those the content from those feeds and then just store them into your repository. So that way that can be taken and then deployed. Um, so that's that. So let's go back and then actually want to cover a few things here. No, we didn't really go into, right? So I want to let's go into a particular EAP node. So obviously, when you go into a particular resource, you're actually seeing quite a few. Actually, we start collecting the metrics already here. So you're seeing all these metrics, and obviously there are charts over a period of time. You can change the refresh intervals. You can change the period, the time period that you're looking at, all that stuff, right? So across all your metrics. So that's and then there's some level of dashboard capabilities right inside that particular resource. And on the inventory tab, you're pretty much looking at all your child resources under that particular resource. So for example, in EAP, you will see all your data sources or your deployments. Actually, this is where I was talking about if you have to create a new deployment into a particular EAP, EAP server, you can actually go ahead and create right from here. So you just basically give some version here, and then you just give your deployment file and just upload it and deploy. Right, so you can do that right from here. But again, it depends on usually the bundles are is a great way to deploy to groups, but this is another option. And then the next one is alerts. So obviously, I think we talked about this. Right now, we're just looking at an individual server, but you can do these alerts on a group level as well. So you can create a new alert and just give it a name. And okay, let me just give it a quick name here, test, and then basically file the alert for any of your conditions. So you're providing conditions here. So the conditions can be various conditions. So availability change if the server goes up or down, and if there is a configuration drift change in your environment. Now there's several things when you want to create an alert, right? So again, and you actually select, for example, a measurement value range. So and then basically value change. Sorry, I want to select the range here. Okay, so for example, if you're looking at the requests, the number of requests or so, right, or even your heap memory or any of those metrics, right? So you take those metrics and you give a low value and a high value, and it pretty much is going to use that as the condition to fire the alert. So again, there's several conditions, and then the next one, obviously, on the alerts is the notification. So how do you want to get notified when the alert is fired? Again, there are various ways. You can actually either run other CLI scripts when that alert is fired, or you can send direct emails. and you can send SNMP traps, or you can send alerts to that particular on a role basis. Um, so that's that there from a notification standpoint, and then also recovery. So if you want, that the alert is fired, but you want to take some recovery action, you can certainly define them, right? So you don't want the alerts to be fired again and again. So if you want just the alert to be disabled once it is fired, you can certainly do that. And dampening as well. So how many times you want that to be? Maybe after 4 times that the alert is fired, you don't want that to be fired anymore. So it. You don't want to just get tons of emails in your inbox. So that's that there. And then the monitoring aspect, right? So obviously, one major aspect of JON, right? So here, you're actually these are the metrics that are being collected on this particular resource at this point. Um, and you can go to any of those, but you can configure more metrics particular to this particular resource. So what is enabled, and what is the collection interval, all that information. So you can certainly go ahead and disable, and these metrics are going to change quite a bit actually. If you let's go to the guest.var. So your schedules and your metrics are going to change here. um, you know, Obviously, availability is there. The status is disabled, so you're not going to see that. Availability is just a type, just a thing, right? So and it's collected at a 10-minute interval. And for example, web. So this is your web component of your application. So obviously you're collecting all those metrics. I don't know about the call time. I think this must be something new here, but that seems good. Okay. So that's now again, there's several metrics. Let's go back quickly to the EAP level here. So the events. So you can actually define your log level events. So if you want to and once you define those events, so you actually do those events right at the inventory level. So you could here is the thing, right? So event. So you actually say what are the log files that you're actually looking at. You can add more files here and just enable it. And then once you have that, what level of events that you want to be looked at. So minimum severity and the pattern and all that. So there's again several configuration that you can put into that. So once those configuration matches, the event gets fired. If there is an error in your log, then that error event shows up here. And then you can take that further up with alerts. Once that error event is fired, you want to be alerted. You can certainly do that. So there's a metric called I think the log event fired or something. But there are alerts that you can define based on those log events. That's the events part of it, and the operations. And on the operations, again, these are the various operations that you can define. For example, when you're looking at the server level, you could again, these operations are going to vary. Right now we're looking at at the EAP server level, so you can start or stop, you can execute CLI commands, things like that, right? So and this is where that scheduling comes into picture. So you either using schedule using a calendar or a cron expression, and then the several options whether you want to do it now and repeat, or this again several configuration there. And if you just go there, I think if you go into operations and new at the var level, then you can basically see if your operations have changed. Right now, you can enable, disable, and restart things like that. Actually, similarly, if you go into server subsystems, right, it's just going to change quite a bit. Maybe connectors, data sources, um, and let's go to the data sources here and operations. And here, let's take a look at here. So now, so you can actually test the connection pool right from your management console, right? So let's just test this right now. Scheduled, so the operation is scheduled. So that's actually that's actually currently happening. So once that operation is scheduled, then you can look at it. What is the status of it, and the result, right? So so the example is, so this is where I think we'll look at. Hold on. So yeah, the status is operation is executed. I'm just looking where the result of that operation is. Let me just go back here. Refresh. Okay, so I think this is basically the results part, right? So that this is the success of the operation, and this is actually the success of the connection pool itself. So the resource level information. So that's the one that's saying that um, our data source connection is successfully tested. So that means it can get a connection there. Again, there's obviously there's several settings that you can change. Again, I'm just looking at a very lower level here. Now at the data source level, you can change several things. Maybe your pool settings, for example, the max pool size, min pool size, and anything that you can actually can see in your standalone config or domain config, right? So all those features are available here. And just didn't mention one thing. Obviously, right now I just running a standalone server, two standalone servers here in this environment. But certainly, if you're running in a domain mode, so the EAP domain, EAP 6 basically has two different modes, right? So standalone and the domain mode. Typically, if you're deploying in JBoss operations network, it makes more sense to use a standalone EAP versus a domain, because pretty much you're using JON as being your management functionality. But there are customers who wants to use domain as well, because they might want to just have multiple options. So you can just go to your domain management um, from just the EAP straight, and then do some simple operations. You don't have to use JON for the you don't have to come to JON to do some simple deployments and across the board. But again, it's all being tracked. The only thing is that you may not have the audit history and all that stuff if you're doing from a domain. But no, it's the JON is monitoring as well. If something doesn't come up, or if your deployment goes down, it's still being monitored from JON. So again, it just depends on the different environments different customers have and their preferences, right? So that's on that, and the configuration changes. So you can so all these things I talked about, these things pretty much you can do. Right now I'm just looking at a particular individual resource, but also you can do the same thing at the group level. So let me go to compatible groups, dev servers. So now you see it. So I have actually this server down alert created at the group level. So that's why you see on multiple servers. So similarly, metrics, these are group level metrics and events. These are the log events that are actually across the group. So you actually see the resource tab. So on that will tell you which resource this particular event came up. Again, same thing. Operations, you can start and stop multiple resources on a group level, and similarly configuration changes across the group. Um, so again, same thing on the left hand side, you can drill down at the group level. So this is where I was just referring to. Now, if it's a compatible group, it makes more sense. Like if you're just mixing matching different resources, this may not come up that well. Here we just we have a group that's a compatible group. That's dev servers, dev EAP servers right here. So that's why you see pretty much the same structure under the hood. So that's that there. What else? I think I tried to cover as much possible here. But again, a couple of other things just quickly. There's also access to your customer support portal. You can actually open a case straight from here, and you can search your knowledge base as well from the JBoss operations network. That's another option. Oh yeah, I think I just want to cover just one more aspect of it, which I talked about but didn't get there. So that's the drift management. So let me just go to one of the EAP server. See, there is the drift. So if you go to drift, so right now I just don't have any definitions created, but when you define a drift definition, you're actually using template based file. You can create your own configuration, but you can use some that already exists, right? So template base files. So they basically these are the base template files that you want to you give a definition name, and you actually define there's already yeah, actually these are the ones. So right now it is as part of this template based files, it's monitoring the folders, the bin folder, the app client folder, the welcome client folder. So any files under this folders change, that's going to be affected as part of this drift definition, right? And you can certainly exclude and include. So you include a few directories, and you can exclude a few files, or whichever the way, maybe subdirectories or so, right? So once you have that drift definition created, so I don't have that done here. Ideally, I would like to, but no. So you can just pin those drift definitions. So once you pin them, then basically the monitoring on those on those files starts, right? So anything. So then I can just go in and change one of the file um, in those folders, and then that JON automatically takes a snapshot. That's what this is about, the snapshot and snapshot time, and basically in compliance and all these things. So um, so that basically it's just going to detect the change, and then provide you all and take a snapshot of that configuration, and then show you the differences between the multiple snapshots as you keep going, changing various configuration files. So again, I think it's just going to give you more functionality once you have that snapshots created. Whether you want to revert back to a particular snapshot, or back to a template files, whichever the way you prefer. Right, so that's the drift portion of it. I know I didn't go deep into drift, but we can certainly talk more and more. There's just so much configuration in this tool that it's just kind of very hard to go into each and every aspect of it. But I hope that actually helps overall. Just just giving an idea on what JON is, and what are its capabilities, and how it functions. And again, thank you very much for your time. And actually, please feel free to reach me for any questions.